going live, and then I'll do a little countdown because Cecil takes the podcast, and if I start too quickly, sometimes the beginning gets cut off. It's an all Chiefs podcast. Is Brian Hill the waiver wire running back of our dreams that we've been waiting for? That and more this week on the couch. Davis Mattek here, and there's no more perfect person to ask this question. Is Brian Hill the waiver wire running back we've been waiting for?
Well, it's been a very bad year for running back pickups on the waiver wire. The two best pickups have been Wayne Gallman and, I guess
Darrell Williams for a week.
Darrell Williams was good for a week. So Ty Johnson in a vacuum was a very good waiver wire pickup. It just never happened for him. And he got hurt in the one game where he actually probably could have scored points, which was this Bears game playing with Jeff Driscoll. And now we don't know when he'll be back. So I think the answer to your question, it's got to be yes. He does have to be the best waiver wire running back pickup of the year.
Well, and it's just almost like we're talking, Kalen Ballage, right? We're talking about opportunity, and there hasn't even been that much opportunity, and certainly not good opportunity. That's why Darrell Williams might be one of the better names here. And of course, this time of year, I always preach just stocking your bench with backup running backs and really the only qualification has to be either a part of a good situation or all of a bad situation. That's what Brian Hill is going to get. I think that, he's a functional he's a functional receiver. He's a no-nonsense straight-ahead runner at a time that Atlanta seems like they're going to no-nonsense. It's like Dan Quinn's last go-around with the team, and they seem to like him, and they want to make it happen. I think Brian Hill could be good this week. And also, this ties into another topic. You retweeted something from Adam Leviton, a great colleague of ours in the industry, about funnel defenses. And lo and behold, Carolina isn't the defense that should encourage Atlanta to go back to basics. So may Brian Hill get off to a great start, and may he reward people who pick him up, even if it's just a few weeks. And how did Atlanta not trade Devontae Freeman to Detroit, even if it was for a bag of footballs? But there's another reason that Brian Hill is close to your heart now, because he's been on your show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he was on my show right before he became relevant to everyone.
Tell the people how it's a perfect internet personality story. Tell us how
it is very perfect. So if you guys don't know who I am, if you guys have not listened to my show before, it's called The Takecast. You can find that anywhere podcasts are found, or you can just search my name on iTunes or wherever, and it will pop right up. So basically, another one of our friends, another one of our internet buddies, Matt Kelly, Fantasy Mansion, tweeted something about Brian Hill, and I said, you know what? I just need you to know this. Brian Hill sucks. And he doesn't really suck, but it is kind of a bit. I just love to say that running backs suck. It's just one of those things. And we all do it. We have players we like that suck. Zach Zenner, perfect example. Guy's been on like 900 different teams. I still think he could be great. And then there are guys who we think are not good, who get 2,000 touches in their career, and there's just no justice. So Brian Hill seems like one of those guys who is going to get this role in Atlanta, and it's going to be a good role. But I said that he sucks. And Brian Hill was on his bye week and also was having a child. So he's sitting at the hospital on the bye week with the mother of his child. He's bored. He Twitter searches his name. He sees that I say that he sucks. He tweets at me. I tweet back at him. We kind of go back and forth a little bit. And then I just DM him and I'm like, hey man, do you want to come on my podcast? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so we talked for about a half hour on the show. And you know what? I actually thought he was pretty well spoken and that he had some very interesting things to say about, what it is like to be a running back in the NFL in this era of, just pass.
So, it seems like this. What's nice about this, and I'm already going off into like meta topics, but Davis, I feel like a conversation that people would want to listen to that we would have about any number of topics is equal to fantasy football.
Definitely.
But what's interesting about this, Davis, is that, like you mentioned, stick. I'm wearing I'll do it, so I'm probably going to pull a groin because I'm an old man. Like I got the Kiki Cutie socks on that my wonderful wife Kate got for me, just because it becomes funny. Like we know, there's a layer to this. It's for entertainment purposes. We know social media is interesting because it shows you that the person or thing or institution that you're using to make your point can be aware of you and talk back to you. But then what comes out of it is, I think, something very meaningful. I mean, I'm assuming that the show that you did with him was something that was you would not have been expecting to find at the end of that, the interactionist, the rainbow that started with that interaction.
Yeah, so, I mean, and I've had two of these things happen where an interaction started on the internet and it turned into a podcast and turned into something that people really liked, which was, of course, the episode that I did with Jeff Janis. And like, Janis and I, like, we're kind of buddies. Like, we DM every once in a while. You know, he just had a kid and we talked after that. Like, we're like kind of sort of buddies now. And that just emerged from me, you know, being his online champion, basically.
Yeah, it's so it's excellent because the internet, I feel like words in social media are so cheap. You know, it's so easy to just tweet something out. It's so easy to just whatever, post something, post a picture, post some sort of snappy comeback or put down or whatever. But then what it ends up producing, what sprouts out of that seed is real human interaction and connection. And I think it's especially fun because you even played off of it yourself, saying, you know, this is, yes, that Brian Hill that you're thinking about picking up on the waiver wire, but this is the best opportunity, and he's on a team that I think is ready to go very simplistic and not leave.
And he has no competition. It's like career special teamers like Kenyon Barner.
Quadri Olison.
Quadri Olison, who I think is like he's like a fullback special teams kind of guy.
Yeah, he's Alfred Blue maybe.
Right. Yeah. And then actually I happen to randomly know they have another guy because I play in a dynasty league that is so deep that like any player that's on an active roster on Sunday has to be owned. And I saw someone picked up an Atlanta running back by the name of Keith Smith the other day, who I've never heard of before, but he's there.
They had Tony Brooks-James in the preseason, but the Steelers ended up with him, and now he's actually active. It's that time of year. It's that time of year.
The true zero running backs come out now.
Yeah, and it's funny too with the zero running back moniker, because I often say in the preseason, Dave, it's like even zero with string running backs from August, you know, guys that aren't even on a roster, end up mattering in fantasy football. It's one of the reasons fantasy football is kind of absurd. And by the way, I'm wearing the Jamal Charles jersey. I was inspired because Davis is, you know, it's almost like NFL formal wear. I know, isn't it fun? I mean, have you ever seen a play like the jump pass?
Never seen a play like half the stuff he does. Mahomes is like I love Lamar. I love Russ. I love Dak. I think that football is in a very good space right now because we have these young, exciting, athletic quarterbacks. But as much as I love Lamar, as much as I love Dak, they really are not even in the universe that Mahomes is in. Like he is the galaxy brain of NFL quarterbacks. Yeah. Like he really is on another level.
There was a moment, and we'll spin this into some fantasy actionable stuff for the folks, because thank you everybody for giving us the opportunity to just kind of be ourselves and call it our job. And the story behind this, by the way, is Cecil Lammy dropped Jamal Charles in our 2010 staff league. I picked him up in week 2 and won, and he sent me this jersey because I would bring it up often. It's a fun wink, but the universe, like you say, is winking at us through Patrick Mahomes. And what's really fun about this is, Davis, I would say that a player like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson makes the game like asymmetrical or non-linear to defend, right? Like there's just no way. This is why these guys are in Bill Belichick's nightmares, right? Like he can't pull them down into the video game that he's trying to create with his defense. They pull him into their video game where he now is not the big boss at the end of the level.
Yeah,
he's just the player trying to figure out how to stay alive. And to see that these quarterbacks can put Bill Belichick where, you know, he's toying with other offenses and quarterbacks, it's fun. But what it comes back to, Davis, it reminds me like overreacting to one play whenever he hit Tyreek Hill last preseason, and you know he was out past triple coverage. I think he was could have thrown it out even farther, and it was like something special is happening here, right? Like if it gets you excited as somebody who's watched a lot of football in your life, and for fantasy that should get your attention, right? For fantasy,
definitely,
it should blow away because there's so much great work done with numbers, Davis. But numbers, anytime you're using analytics or numbers, you're going by an inherent assumption. See, what we think of as objective is
you're going by the assumption that everything you're about to see has already happened to some degree.
Yes.
Right? Which Lamar is going to break every record there is for quarterback rushing, for quarterback touchdown rates. So I love Lamar. Lamar's literally the header on my Twitter. I wrote an article in the offseason saying Lamar Jackson's going to win you your fantasy league. Where do you think I had him ranked preseason amongst quarterbacks? It wasn't first overall because I'm working in a threshold of ranges of outcomes, and no quarterback has ever done what Lamar is doing before. And ranking him that way would have been irresponsible, but it's not to say that I think what he's doing is not sustainable. It's just no one has ever done it before.
Right. So you nailed it. I mean, it's by using those numbers, it's assuming that the future is going to adhere to the bounds that the past has created. And if there's anything actually that watching the NFL, I've been watching it closely for my job for like 14 to 13 years now, but with my life for like 30, 35 years of it at least, is that actually every time we turn the page, Davis, there's something we haven't seen before, right? I mean, in some ways, it's the same because it's just mixtures of the DNA of old offenses and old plays. And what was that film that was going around, like the sprint draw from 1935, that looked like a modern play. But then there are these personalities that come along. Because that's the thing about Patrick Mahomes. It's almost like he has the audacity to believe that he can do these things.
Yeah, like he's just like, it feels like he never had a coach tell him not, and he didn't. Because look at who his coaches have been. His coaches have been Cliff Kingsbury and Andy Reid. Like he never had a coach that tried to put the shackles on him. Can you imagine if what's the name of the Titans coach right now? Vrabel. Can you imagine if the Titans had ended up with him? He could just be Marcus Mariota right now,
Right. That's the whole thing too about destinies of players. It's the organization they land in makes so much difference. And we thankfully the alignment was there, and we hope when a team trades up for a player that they see the player with clear eyes, and then we'll create an alignment. And Andy Reid absolutely created an alignment. And there's a whole other parenting. Maybe you never have to worry about parenting. I know you're not going to. Good for you, man. Because it's like the same thing with parenting, right? Like if you try to raise a kid in a certain way, you may cut off some extraordinary possibility because it doesn't fit in, right? This is the classic kid that was like dropped out of school or whatever, but then like by the time they're 30 revolutionizes something because they just were never going to fit in the mold, and trying to make them fit in the mold isn't good coaching or good parenting. But here's the thing, right? So we know Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill, if it's somehow possible, Davis, Tyreek Hill looks even better than he did last year. I mean, he looks to me like he's hyperspacing. Remember the old hyperspace button on Asteroid? He's he's like hyperspacing. It's just like they can blink and he's somewhere else. Even the way he can start.
I think it's actually explainable why that is, though.
Why?
He took 8 weeks off when everyone else was getting tackled and banged up. So his body is way fresher than Demarcus Robinson, than McCole Hardman, than Travis Kelce. These dudes and these guys were playing like in, they had some tough games while Tyreek was out, and Tyreek is fresh. He's probably like at this point, I think he's probably been tackled like 8 times all year long. So it's just like his body is just a little bit more ready to go than these other guys. And by the way, I think that this is one of the key variables for why some of these zeroth string running backs. I remember listening to you talk about this on the Audible from like 8 years ago. I remember the first guy I ever heard you say it about. It was Joik Bell. That'll people listening to this who started playing fantasy football in the last 4 years, they have no idea who that is. But he was a great example of a zeroth string running back, and part of the reason why Damian Williams and CJ Anderson last year, they can come in and they can just burn these defenders because they're not injured. They've been doing is working out and conditioning all year. They haven't been tackled, and that's a huge edge for them at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's an idea that keeps coming up in my brain that fascinates me, Davis, is the idea that like maybe in the next 50, 100 years, maybe earlier, the technology should probably evolve if we haven't destroyed ourselves by then, to be able to like download yourself into someone else's body, like Malkovich, like being John Malkovich, and if we could feel like the pain and weariness that these players' bodies have at this point, I think your point would be really salient. But somebody else is going to benefit, right? Like, it isn't going to be all Tyreek Hill. And it isn't going to be all Travis, or should I say Hill and Kelce. Poor Kelce. I feel like we're like 1 or 2 years away from Kelce having that Rob Gronkowski last year where you're like, oh, man, because he just takes so – that's the thing between him and Hill, right? You never see Hill take a clean, solid hit, ever. And Kelce is like this big battleship that takes broadside hits time after time again, even when sometimes he's dishing them out. Is there a third name, though? Is there a third name that we can at least put a chip on? You can look at it as the Chargers matchup in Mexico City on Monday night, looking at it as like a DFS showdown kind of question, or more the rest of the season. Last year, it was Damian Williams. Is there a third member of this offense that can be elevated by Patrick Mahomes and elevate our teams?
I mean, I kind of think that McCole Hardman has, I like because
Squeeze the volume. Yeah, that's it.
Demarcus Robinson is good at what the Chiefs ask him to do. And, he clears out space well. He pretty much never drops a pass. He's like one of the best in the NFL. Like, you know what he is. He is the new Jason Avant in this offense. And people remember Jason Avant from the old Eagles offense. It's exactly what Demarcus Robinson is. And that this offense needs someone like that. But also, like, imagine McCole Hardman getting all those snaps instead of him. And this offense takes the next level.
Well, and with Hardman, he really might only need 4 or 5 touches a week to be an every week difference maker, because it's clear that his play speed, it's not just his time speed, his play speed is something different. And a play like another galvanizing plays like that jump pass, last week, but Hardman was in the right spot, and then Hardman knows what to do. So I think Hardman's a great name to think about. And then there's always Darrell Williams. Again, we'll see. It's like the Chiefs' backfield's like a wheel of fortune.
No, I disagree. It's Damian now. He's healthy now. He's healthy now.
He is.
And like, I know this was like a very popular meme, like when he was running bad earlier in the year, but like, I don't really care about like a running back having a bad yards per carry in this offense, because the reason why they play him is because like he really might be better than anyone other than Christian McCaffrey at taking those swing passes.
Yes.
Like when he gets those swing, he is always where Mahomes wants him to be. And playing linebacker against the Chiefs honestly can't be that hard, because what Damian's going to do when he's going out for the pass, and he beats the guy to the spot every time. It's uncanny. He always does.
As long as he continues to get that passing involvement. The only reason I think the door could creak open, well, it's partially because Andy Reid has already shown us that he will change his mind about players. He's not that stubborn. And just the Darrell Williams, the funny thing, Davis, is if you did a cut of Darrell Williams touches this year, you'd say like, wow, that guy looks like he's good at football. He's good in the passing game too. He had a few receptions downfield. He had a few games where he showed he could unlock some of the value in the passing game. So I just think if it is going to be someone other than Damian, it would be Darrell. I don't know what's going on with LaShawn McCoy. But on that same note,
he's just old, right? Like he had the juice for a little bit at the beginning of the year, but he got he got an ankle injury, he got a hamstring injury, and he fumbled. So like Andy Reid's no dummy. Like, him and LaShawn McCoy go way back, but he's not going to make his football team worse when he has younger, better players who are ready to go.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm just thinking while you're saying that too, that because I like the way you're thinking about Andy Reid in general, that this is going to be hopefully a fun year, knock on wood, in the AFC playoff bracket for the first time in a long time, right? I mean, there's at least three. There's at least talking about Belichick versus Mahomes, Belichick versus Deshaun Watson, Belichick versus Lamar Jackson. It's open.
Ravens Lamar, that would be a game.
Yeah, well, and the rematch, right? So similar kind of question about Lamar Jackson. Is there somebody he's going to elevate? Is it Ingram? Is it Andrews? Because I think even you could get Andrews a lot cheaper than Kelsey, and Andrews could outproduce. Andrews could easily be far and away the most valuable fantasy tight end from here on out. That tide of Lamar Jackson, Davis, when I picture it, I think defensive coordinators are going to have to overplay the run. Lamar Jackson's running threat, I should say. That's going to leave Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews, or both maybe, or maybe just a lot of Mark Ingram.
The University of Oklahoma North, we call them.
Right. Who is it? Who's the piece that you want other than Lamar Jackson?
I think it's got to be Marquise Brown, because Marquise Brown is he is so fast, and he got kind of like mislabeled during the draft process as like a speed guy, a burner guy, but like he's actually very talented. He can run all the routes. He can actually kind of similar. So doing player comparisons is tough, because one-to-one player comparisons, like if I just comped everyone to like a guy I actually thought they were close to, like people don't remember Devery Henderson, right? Like no one remembers like watching him play what he looked like. So the comp that you would make for Marquise Brown would be like, oh, well, he's kind of like Tyreek Hill in the sense of he's very fast and he plays a little bit bigger than his size, and he's able to win in some contested catches spots where you'd think that a player that size would not win. So for me, I think Marquise Brown has a real chance of being like the second half of the year breakout guy where you look back and you go, oh my gosh, he had 600 yards and 4 touchdowns after week 11. And like, you didn't even realize it was happening until it had passed.
It's like Odell Beckham rookie year, right? Where every week he has a big week, and he can't keep that up. And I think it was Cecil that brought up on the show we were doing on Sunday that, remember, he wasn't meaningfully involved in the offseason. He was still rehabbing and getting up to speed in the preseason. And then during the season, he's already missed some time with injuries. So it's possible that we haven't seen the true Lamar Jackson to Marquise Brown. We saw him week 1 against Miami, and then he promptly got hurt.
I feel like Marquise Brown probably has put in 0 full practices in his professional career. Right.
So I think that basically, to echo one of the things you said, he's skilled. He's a skilled player. He's not just fast and quick. He's got a lot of skill, and that includes playing the ball in the air. It includes being able to break someone down, having a strategy after the catch. And defenses are going to be on their heels. Lamar Jackson, what I love about Lamar Jackson, and I agree with you, by the way, that what Lamar Jackson is doing, Lamar Jackson, it's, again, player comparisons. You say Michael Vick, but in reality, I remember.
But that's like, it's actually fair, though.
It is. Well, and I remember pounding the table, telling people in the second round of your rookie drafts, take Lamar Jackson. Just don't worry about it. I don't care who your quarterback is, because we haven't seen another runner at quarterback like Lamar Jackson, in that he becomes the aggressor as a runner. Because usually quarterback is supposed to protect himself. And I just love that John Harbaugh doesn't care. Let's go out. I mean, you're an incredible, talented, athletic, aggressive runner. Why would I try to limit that? Go ahead. What are you going to say?
Yeah. Well, I want your opinion on this, because this was something I spent arguing about with people today on the internet. But my boy, Dak Prescott, he is 5th in quarterback scoring in fantasy. Yeah. And I would argue that all the quarterbacks ahead of him, which are Russell, Lamar, and Deshaun, probably not Deshaun, but Lamar and Russell Wilson and Mahomes' if we're talking points per game, all of their coaches put them in positions to succeed every game, every down, every play. Whereas I think, not Russ. Russ only in the second half. Only in the second half. Then
only when they're down by multiple scores. Yeah.
I would say Russ and Dak is actually kind of a close comparison, where Dak is really fighting against his head coach to win games, where like he is put in impossible positions game after game and finds a way to deliver because he's just really good. I think, and this is, I'm kind of, I love Dallas. I love Dak. So like, this is just a little bit of homerism, of course, coming in this argument, but he would be a guy that I would say, pay that guy. And also, how many people do you think would even know that he was 5th in the NFL in fantasy points right now? Probably you don't realize that.
Well, I think that we get stuck in his rookie year in thinking, well, yes, he was outstanding and so highly efficient, but look at the situation he was dropped into. Look at the offensive line. Look at how he was the last thing defense had to worry about. But if people are watching him now, he's legitimately an excellent quarterback. And I'm not talking about the numbers, although the numbers are one way to get there.
But he makes the throws that you want, like an all-pro quarterback. Like, he's fitting it into 3 defenders and leading his guys. Like, he is playing so well. And I just it's just annoying to me when the anchor effect comes in with these guys, where people think Lamar can't throw because of that Chargers playoff game. Right. And people think that Dak is the product of his offense because he only played okay as a rookie when everyone else had the best seasons of their career.
Well, and you remember that whenever he didn't have Ezekiel Elliott, the bottom of the offense fell out, but also Tyron Smith was banged up during that time and things like that. It created this context for an argument that, well, Dak is just a product of his surroundings, but no, he's elevating his surroundings at this point. And what all these guys have in common that's fun to watch too, is just that eye of the storm leadership, where as a teammate, if you were a teammate of one of these guys, you would really feel like, well, no matter what, he's going to do what he's going to
do his job. And if I do my job, we're going to win.
We're going to win. I always compare it to baseball and the pitcher, where they know that they only have to score like a run or two because the pitcher is going to be so good that they actually loosen up and hit the lights out, and win 12-1 because they can just relax. Yeah. And Dak Prescott is now that guy.
Quarterback is kind of crazy though in the NFL right now, because 6 months ago we would have said, well, who even needs a quarterback? We have all these teams who have, Jacksonville, they got Foles, and Miami traded for Rosen, and Tampa Bay has Winston, and all these teams. And then now you would say, okay, well, maybe 15 teams have their quarterback, and Drew Brees is showing signs of age. Phillip Rivers looks horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like he's about ready for the shed. So I could see the next 2 years being like one of the biggest quarterback turnover periods in NFL history.
It's already happening. Well, that's why this is the year of the backup, right? I mean, it's already happening. The wheel is turning, and it all coincides with the end of the careers of Eli and Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers, and that mid-aughts class of quarterbacks.
They're all Brady is going to maybe 2 more years for Brady at this point. I don't know. Because here's the thing. The Patriots, yes, they're 8-1. Yes, they looked great, but the first time they got punched in the face, they did not get back up off the mat.
4 weeks in a row, Davis. This is going to be fun. See, I mean, I want to help people win in fantasy football, and I want to help reinforce that way for people to get connected to the game. But there's sometimes that I just come back to being a fan of football. And how can you not be a fan of football? The Dallas, Minnesota game and the Seattle, San Francisco game, for instance, and just how you just feel, if anything, the way these teams just pour themselves out in each one of these games as if their life depends on it. But the New England run, talk about revealing the true nature of a team: Philly, Dallas, Houston, and Kansas City. And we don't even have to think of it in terms of teams, because Carson Wentz, and I know he doesn't have Deshaun Jackson, that's a bummer, but Carson Wentz is still better than any quarterback they faced before Lamar Jackson. And then Dak Prescott, and then Deshaun Watson, and then Patrick Mahomes. And then in those games, the way Tom Brady plays might be a lot more material to whether New England wins or not. And we may see more things exposed. And I guess the fantasy take out of this, Davis, is probably what? A lot of Mohamed Sanu, right? A lot of
James. It's going to switch from being Sony Michel season to being James White season, because James White has not always. James White for the last 3 years has been Tom Brady's foxhole guy, even more so than Edelman.
Yeah, I like that term, foxhole guy. I've been calling it the struggle target. I like that too.
That's not I think that's Rich Rebar's thing. I don't know for sure. I would love to I did not create that. I think it was Rich Rebar. It's
a fantastic way to describe that. Davis, there's a role for a player in a passing game. Austin Hooper is the archetype of when you feel like a quarterback's going to struggle, then this is the player you want. It's almost like fading the quarterback's day from an emotional or comfort standpoint when you know they're going to be uncomfortable all day. And the foxhole picture also conveys that. So he always cheers to Lord Reeves. He's always close in some way. There's some term or some way of thinking about things that he came up with that is affecting us. So, but I had on my notes here, Davis, an angle, what's your angle on New England? And I think we set it up well to think about those short range targets. You want to consider Philip Dorsett, but we'll see. And the New England offensive line hasn't exactly been in great shape either. One more of those expired quarterbacks I brought him up in the matchup is Deshaun Watson. And likewise, and obviously can you see a theme here? I feel like these are great quarterbacks. Sometimes I don't even realize when I say things that I like that I said, and people will say back to me what I said. I said something like, we see greatness and we want to be part of that greatness, and fantasy football is a way to do that, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And in these quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, nice. I'm trying to point to you on my screen. I don't know why. And Lamar Jackson. And what about Deshaun Watson? Because we know there's DeAndre Hopkins. Will Fuller might be on your waiver wire. And because Will Fuller is now...
Will Fuller got dropped in a couple of my, not quite as competitive, leagues. So, there's he could be out there.
Kenny Stills, Duke Johnson, even Darren Fells. Is there somebody that you want? It's almost like, I think of it like the ladle and the cups, and Deshaun Watson tends to fill up more than just one cup with his play. What other cup do you want to have in your lineup to catch some of the Deshaun Watson greatness?
Fells, I think. Fells is out there. And if you just think about, okay, well, why would a tight end be breaking out with Deshaun Watson? And then you just kind of think about, okay, well, what is Bill O'Brien doing with these tight ends out there? And then you go, oh, their offensive line is terrible. They need 2 tight ends out there all the time. They can't be playing 11 personnel with 180-pound Will Fuller and 190-pound Kenny Stills and be trying to, do run plays and be trying to they just need guys out there who can block. And Darren Fells' Pro Football Reference page is hilarious. It's like, okay, this guy was Nate Solder with 20 targets a year for 5 years. And then he signed in Houston, and the team just decided all of a sudden that he could catch passes, and which is really funny. But Fells is a great example of a guy who no, he's probably out there on your waiver wire right now, despite having 6 touchdowns on the year. And like, I mean, dude, he is like, you can start him in fantasy, like no doubt.
Especially this week. I'm glad you brought him up. I got really excited. Sometimes, Davis, I'm a year too early. Sometimes I'm like 5 years too early. Because I remember getting really excited with him when I think it was Arizona was developing him. Because he had that interesting story, kind of like Mo Alley Cox, or, there's so many now. Why am I not remembering his name? Eric Swope. Some of these guys that are late to football. So the idea of a 27, 28, 29-year-old breakout year isn't crazy. Because they're in the same part of their football development curve as some of these players are when they were like sophomores or juniors in college.
Right.
And if an NFL team is deciding we want to put our time in developing this talent, they must see something really potentially extraordinary. Yeah. So I always pay attention to those guys. And Darren Fells was another one of those guys because he spent a bunch of time playing basketball in Europe before he got to this point. But what you see, and the quick footnote here, by the way, is Jordan Thomas could return soon. And Jordan Thomas is like a more athletic Darren Fells, but they're both, like you said, tackle sized. But you can see Deshaun Watson really trusts Darren Fells. Like if he just sees a flash of him in his eye, he'll. And Jordan Thomas was doing some of this last year too, where he'll throw it a short range pass like with a lot of velocity. Darren Fells will always snag it, and especially in the red zone. And that's why he has, I think, 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games. And this week, if we're talking just DFS and narrowing it down, he's interesting. Even Jordan Akins becomes more interesting because those Baltimore corners. Baltimore all of a sudden is a really fun team to think about.
Yeah, it's funny because their thing for 15 years has been how good the defense is. And now the defense is pretty bad, but the offense is fun.
But the defense is coming together. So this is a really good example. And JJ Zacharyson, friend of the show, put out some numbers about percentage of targets to each position. And I just asked him, cool, can you run that for like weeks 1 to 5 and week 6 to 10 and then compare and just see what the deltas are? Because year-to-date data, depending on the team, can be very deceptive. Because important, meaningful things happen during the season that change the context of the data. So when you put it all in one bucket, you lose some of the meaningfulness or actionability of what the data shows. It's almost like, and this is something I was thinking about. I'm so lazy, Davis. So I like to say this stuff and say like you or somebody else, like take this and run with it. Because for each team, you could almost on offense and defense pull out a couple of important. It's kind of like the old RotoViz splits app,
Yeah.
The key is picking the right places to do the split, like the block of marble that you just hit it on just the right spot, and it falls. And I think with Baltimore, now that they have Jimmy Smith healthy again and have traded for Marcus Peters, this is a different defense. And I will see, but I don't think that Deshaun Watson is going to want to test the corners here. I think Duke Johnson becomes an interesting play this week. I mean, we're going to assume, I think assumption of rational coaching can be terrible, but there's some quarterbacks we can assume assumption of rational quarterbacking. And rational quarterbacking is not testing Jimmy Smith. It's not testing Marcus Peters, although Marcus Peters will give up a big play here and there by guessing. It's pick nickel and diming them. And letting that umbrella open where you're not necessarily going to test that. It's going to be interesting. The point is we're still gathering data because we haven't watched this Baltimore defense with this. When Brandon Carr is your number 4 corner, then that gives you some flexibility to do some stuff, even though they don't have the pass rushers they've had in the past. Even Terrell Suggs is in Arizona now. So I think Darren Fells is a fun name to think about. We're a little past the halfway point. There's a billion things we could talk about here. In the last 10 minutes, we'll go off the rails to whatever. But I want to just throw it open to you in this question. Take it any direction you want, Davis. What do you feel like you've learned watching the first 10 weeks of the NFL?
Being able to have a running quarterback really does open things up for offenses a little bit. Like watching the Ravens and even the Chiefs, Mahomes scrambling a little bit, watching the Cowboys, watching the Bills. I know that there's been a lot of analysis done on the value of running the ball, which of course, we all just can agree now, being able to pass the ball successfully is just much more important than running the ball. But it seems like quarterback runs are like the happy medium, and where it really comes into play is around the goal line and on 3rd and short, 4th and short, where like these are plays you just gotta have, and being able to do like the RPO with the quarterback run. It just feels like you can get that yard you need every single time. And like, Buffalo is a really great example of this because I don't think that team is very good. Advanced Analytics does not think that team is very good, but they've run hot on converting 3rd and 4th downs and especially run hot on red zone offense because Josh Allen is 4 for 4 on carries inside the 5 going for touchdowns. That's just such a valuable skill set for quarterbacks to have. And I just wish that, I wish maybe teams had a package for that where they had every year. Why wouldn't you draft Tyree Jackson or JT Barrett or whoever and make that guy your 3rd string quarterback, but have a few packages for him?
Taysom Hill.
I hate Taysom Hill.
Oh, come on.
I know you're a Taysom Hill guy.
No, I don't have any feelings about Taysom Hill in particular, but I think Taysom Hill inspired Sean Payton to do what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I guess maybe the reason I don't like the Taysom Hill version of it is because I don't think he's like mega athletic at the running part. Like I think he's more of like a he's like a Mike Allstott of running quarterbacks, whereas I would think of like JT Barrett being the like Justice Hill version of being a running quarterback.
Well, he's plenty fast, but he's just not necessarily a creative runner.
Well, he's just not a very football IQ-y type player is my assessment of him.
But he can play punt gunner.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, the love affair between Taysom Hill and Sean Payton and the New Orleans fans it's something I will never understand, but it's very special to them. And every team has a player like that the outside is like, why does this guy get touches? Why do the fans care? And the fans love him.
Well, some of the reasons he gets touches is what you were alluding to is it's preparation, right?
Yeah.
You have as a defensive coordinator,
you got to be ready for it.
You have to be ready for it, or you'll waste a timeout or something else that's tactically important. I know Lance Zierlein. I think we all can look up to Lance's work. Brought up the 3 Heisman package with Ingram and Griffin that Baltimore put out there, and he just pointed out, you bet that they ran that play in a blowout win. So that every week now, the defensive coordinator has to be ready what they're going to do if they see that lineup, they see that personnel set in that formation. So I think you're right, and we brought it up with Lamar Jackson that it makes the game asymmetrical and non-linear, 11-on-11 football, and hopefully what happens.
11-on-11, I love that. I love just the whole concept of going 11-on-11.
And I think I want to say I saw Emery Hunt, who also does great work, mentioning this because it's something that always bothered me, the idea that you should keep running quarterbacks on a leash because you don't want them to get hurt, but we know that quarterbacks get hurt.
They're better at not getting hurt.
Because you're dictating in some ways the terms of engagement when you're a runner, but not as a pocket passer.
How many times do we think Daniel Jones is going to get concussed in his career? Like that dude. Right. Have you ever seen a quarterback be able to feel the backside rusher less? Like Jamal Adams just came up to him and took the ball out of his hands. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, and what you can do hopefully with that is it can be kind of a productive ignorance. Ben Roethlisberger was the same way, where in some ways a quarterback having no sense of the rush can make it so there's no fear, so they actually can hang in to make plays that normally if the clock was going off, they wouldn't.
If you were going to give me statue quarterback who drops his eyes the second he feels pressure versus mobile quarterback who is averse to pressure to a fault, I take the second because the first version you get David Carr, right? Where it's just like he cannot be a functional quarterback because he's too worried about getting hit. Daniel Jones he's too worried about making the successful play to worry about turning the ball over.
And you could see it on his film at Duke too. There was a lot of places where he would really stare down the barrel and take the hit to make the throw, which is not a common thing to see in college. In some ways, it makes folks that were leaning on the argument of like his surroundings were so bad, you have to grade him on a curve. Some of that he got to show some qualities. So you always feel like really for college quarterbacks, if we were evaluating them, Davis, only like 20 or 30% of their film matters. Like there's so much that it's when it's easy. And I think even the Baker Mayfield champions are seeing that this year is like how good they look when things are easy.
Poor Baker, man.
Yeah.
His coaches have really just left him out to dry.
Yeah. And it's like the Cleveland story is stronger than the Baker story, right? At the end of last year, we thought the Baker story is stronger than the Cleveland story, and the Cleveland story is going to become the Baker story. But no. The Baker story is becoming the Cleveland story. And it's just like a question. I think narrative matters, and Baker Mayfield, in some ways, I think his brashness, because I think that Lamar Jackson's confident, Deshaun Watson's confident, but there is a extra mustard that Baker Mayfield had that in some ways, maybe from a karmic standpoint, left him a little more open to the same hubris that John Dorsey.
Well, he just was not ever like in the same route. Like I'm an Oklahoma Sooners fan. You're not going to find someone who's going to go to
Yeah.
the mat more for Baker than me, but Baker in terms of like physical talent was not ever as good as those guys. So like he just had to be better from a mental standpoint, and in college and in parts of his rookie year, he was. I mean, he just was, it was like watching just like a guy on ADHD, like medication, play quarterback. He just was making every decision so quickly and so correctly. And now he just is not doing that.
When it comes back to alignment of coaches and quarterbacks, to where, like we were talking about, Russell Wilson's rowing upstream against the surroundings that he's given. Dak Prescott is to an extent until they get rid of Jason Garrett. You know, where
it's funny because Dak has it half and half. It seems like Kellen Moore seems like he knows what other than the Saints game. The Saints game is probably the worst offensively played game of the year. I don't know if you'll find anything worse, but like. For like half of the game, it's like, oh my gosh, how could anyone ever stop this Dallas offense? It's like all five guys are open on every play. And then you can tell when it's Jason Garrett with the call sheet, because it's like, okay, it's draw left. Like no one's moving. It's just my guy versus your guy football, which just doesn't work anymore.
No, well, I mean, there's a time and place for it in a game, but I mean, let me put it this way: if you do team building where you think that's not important and you don't have guys that can win in those situations, eventually it will come back to haunt you. I mean, eventually in January, it'll probably be your Achilles heel in some important juncture of a game. So you have to that has to still matter to you in team building, but it's not the centerpiece of your team building. And I think you're absolutely right that you can see Kellen Moore trying to pull this offense into the 21st century, and Jason Garrett is just stuck back like in the 90s. And we'll see when the page turns. But you like to see that alignment. That's another thing that matters for fantasy football, right? I mean, sometimes, Davis, it can just be alignment. You can have lesser talents, lesser producers, but better results for fantasy because there's actual alignment between philosophy, personnel, and execution of a game plan. Where other times, so Baker Mayfield, what this makes me think about, Davis, is there are some quarterbacks that it doesn't matter how poor the game planning is. Like Patrick Mahomes, he's just going to be able to take the game and put it on a line with like his destiny or his style of play, regardless what Russell Wilson does. And then there's other quarterbacks that can just look transcendent when the alignment's there. But if the alignment's not there, Jared Goff comes to mind here, right? Like if it's not there, then all of a sudden you see all the shortcomings and you see all the weaknesses. And hopefully, as this tangent started, athleticism can be an equalizer. And I'm thinking of that John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson video. I don't know if you saw it when they were on the sidelines. And John Harbaugh's telling him, do you know how many kids for the next 20 years are going to be wearing number 8 playing quarterback, right? Like Lamar Jackson will beget more Lamar Jacksons. Patrick Mahomes will beget more Patrick Mahomes. And hopefully the coaches
Steph Curry has begat there's 30 kids who want to be Steph Curry every year in the NBA draft now.
Right. And it intersects with the direction that the game's going, and it pushes the game, accelerates it into that direction, which is excellent. Like a league where we have 32 athletic quarterbacks, and some of it too is the body type. Like Baker Mayfield at least stands for the idea that the league is realizing on every quarterback has to be 6'5", 240. And there's an elephant in the room here, Davis. All if you look at quarterback, because when I was growing up, race and head coach was still a very big part of the discussion.
It's still a thing in the NFL now, I think.
But we can rattle off the best quarterbacks in the league. They're all, look, it's the United States, so I'm just going to say we could get down to like biracial or talk about it in those terms, even though race is just something we made up. It's like there's no such thing from a scientific point of view of race. So let's just say non 100% European origin, if I'm going to try to like pick the right words, but they're all not white quarterbacks. Let's just put it that way. And it was unthinkable to imagine that like 30 years ago. And it will change the direction of the game in so much as more players that probably
players are going to be allowed to play more positions. Like now because I bet even like racist Southern high school coaches, like I bet even now they would not be like, oh, well, this kid can't play quarterback because he's not white. Like I feel
he's not smart enough, which is like a proxy for those kind of things. Yeah.
Right. So like I think like that's actually probably a cool thing where like football is like actively combating some racist behavior where like the success of these guys is actually being like helpful.
Davis, it's just like the letting athletes profit off their likeness, right? Like a lot of states where the politics of that state would not be on the side of labor are going to push through some sort of legislation for that because they want to win football games. We can't let California have the edge on us, right? And it reminds me, I'll always come back to the Chuck Klosterman piece where people say, like, why football? And I suppose there's 30 or 40 different things I could have become consumed about to have made the last 15 years of my life about those things. You know, I'm passionate about the thing. I love the things that I love. Like, I want to be like in the belly of the whale and get consumed by them. But football, just, you know, the wheel stopped at football when I decided to jump from my day job, and here we are. And there's a Chuck Klosterman piece that talks about how the culture of football, in terms of the audience of football, and especially like how teams are run, is very conservative, but the game itself is very progressive because anything that works will just be absorbed.
Everyone else will adopt it. Yeah, if it works, other teams will start doing it. Right.
So now the athletic quarterback, which is like a proxy, but, you know, Josh Allen's extremely athletic. Daniel Jones is extremely athletic. So it doesn't necessarily mean non-white or black quarterback.
It just means a quarterback that can move a little bit.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz pre-ACL.
Carson Wentz and Josh Allen are actually not that different. It's just that Carson Wentz has got a lot better throwing downfield than Josh Allen has been. But yes, the athletic quarterback and continuing to change the bounds of, because I remember when I started doing the All-Star Game road trip that some of these teams, and I think some of these teams still have it, have very rigid thresholds. And this is how Russell Wilson falls to the third round. They just have the very rigid thresholds. What was the thing that came out recently in the last month or two that, you know, there was a team that wanted Russell Wilson and somebody vetoed it and said too short. He's just too short. And teams are getting over themselves, and it's a way of embracing how the game will continue to change and be fluid. Okay, before we go off the rails in like 2 or 3 minutes, Davis, I want to do like a lightning round with you, just like hot, cold, lukewarm, cool on some of the performances or players that were like, let's just stay with wide receivers. Okay. So just react, okay? Stefon Diggs.
Love it.
He's coming.
Yeah, he is better than Adam Thielen, and I'm very glad that fans of the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to accept that reality.
And you think the numbers are going to swing back?
I think it was a rough couple games for the Vikings, and you know, Olabisi Johnson's a pretty decent player, and they do some cool things with the tight ends. Like they're one of the only teams that runs an effective tight end screen. So like that's always fun. But yeah, I mean, Diggs is such a baller.
They like Irv Smith, Juju Smith-Schuster.
My heart weeps, man.
I know. Mason Rudolph. As a Steelers fan, I'm engaged with the team like I haven't been in a long time.
They are gritting and freaking grinding, man. But
it's fun to root for them.
Juju.
Well, because Mason Rudolph limits the offense. I'm going to see
Juju is a finesse player.
Yeah.
And Mason Rudolph and this offense that Mike Tomlin, by the way, has created basically on the fly.
Yeah.
It is not a finesse offense.
No. They want to get back to running the ball with James Conner, and that's what fits with the defense they have. Odell Beckham.
I mean, this got to be the guy to target in trades right now before the playoffs. Like, I can't think of one player that has like a more screaming buy low button than Odell Beckham.
Yeah, probably. And I hate to say it, I mean, with the Thursday night game against the Steelers corners, but the pass rush will get home. I'm going to reassure myself. But there are other games. There are games against Cincinnati.
They play Miami.
Arizona. Miami. Yeah. Exactly. So that's why those could be your Odell Beckham pushes you through to the next round of the playoffs. Okay, a few week 10 performances, whether we take it as like a new reality or an aberration. Christian Kirk.
Love it. Yeah, he's so good. Kyler's so good. We've really just been waiting for this.
Kyler's the next one, right? And he fits right into the conversation.
How have we not even talked about Kyler, man?
He's the poster child for the conversation we've been having.
This is true. No team has been better against the spread this year than the Arizona Cardinals, which means that Vegas has basically been wrong about them at every turn.
And in his football evolution, as someone who learns by doing, he's still a baby. He's still an infant. You know?
Yeah, he was still focusing on baseball like as recently as like 10 months ago.
Yeah. So that's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So maybe he's another one soon. And maybe by the end of the year, Davis, that we think of the way we were thinking about Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, like he gets to fill up a lot of cups. So maybe that's something to think about when you think about Christian Kirk. Darius Slayton.
So you know that I'm never going to get guys like this, right? Because he just was like not a product. Like he's like barely a prospect. Like he was a really good athlete. He ran a 4.39, but like a guy who didn't produce at Auburn and was a 5th round draft pick and is undersized, underweight. it's just like, yeah, maybe he's going to run really hot, but it's just, he'll probably never be on my teams.
But do you think that he can keep this up? And mainly, and again, I keep hitting this note. I feel like this year, Davis, more than any other year that I've been doing fantasy football analysis, the schedule, like you can look at the schedule and really get a grasp on a player's value going forward. That because the bad offenses or bad pass offenses or bad pass defenses, it's just so apparent. And when you look at the Giants and you see they got Philly, Miami, and Washington in the fantasy playoffs, I mean, do you think that even though maybe because I was with you, I was taking Darius Slayton pretty lightly, even after Corey Coleman went down. I'm like, well, he's still a work in progress. He's a guy that like 2 or 3 years will check in on him, but it's already happening. Is it going to keep happening?
Well, I think the interesting thing about Slayton is that he's the one that Daniel Jones just throws the hospital balls to. And I mean, if you're going to be that guy for Daniel Jones, there's going to be a lot of hospital balls. Yeah. So like in my waiver wire column this week, I said, okay, look, I finally, because before I had him as like a 1% bid guy, and that would be irresponsible advice now, because if he's still out there in your league, he's not going for 1%. So I would put in 15% of what you have left on him if you would start him. Now, if you're not going to start him in week 11 or week 12 due to buys, just don't bother, because I think that Sterling Shepard probably will be back this year. Evan Ingram will probably be back this year. The interesting thing is they're probably going to shut Saquon down. And if they do that, they're just going to throw 45 times a game.
Yeah, you bring that up. Jim Gibbs, I meant to play with this. He says, trade Barkley. So, and before I'll set that up this way, that sometimes it's the kind of move in fantasy football that really makes your, like in the cells of your body, you feel yourself hesitating, that often are the most brilliant moves. Like if you yourself are saying, I just don't know, this doesn't feel right. A week or two down the line, you'll realize like, oh, that was it. That was the moment, because that hesitation I had is a sign that people, this might be the last week that people will pay up for Barkley. Did you cash him in?
I would cash him in. I mean, I don't know. I don't own Barkley in any league. Like because I took Christian McCaffrey at first overall and everything. But if I did have Barkley, yeah, what is the incentive for an injured Saquon Barkley, who is like all of David Gettleman's ethos is tied up and like getting this guy to a Hall of Fame career? Why would he be playing in December for a 2-win Giants team?
Yeah, and he's saying poor Saquon's like, I won't let it happen. Well, man, that's not, it's maybe
he just like, I think Daniel Jones is not doing him any favors, because I think he's not checking out of the, like Eli was, say whatever we want, Eli lost all of his ability to throw the ball, but he still could like look at a defense and figure it out. And I think Daniel Jones is a little bit of the Jared Goff of just staring out and all he sees is jerseys. He doesn't see what the jerseys are doing. So he's not checking out of these situations where Saquon is just not going to get any yards.
And just as a side note, the Jets' run defense is good. Like,
it's pretty good, yeah.
I mean, so look at the schedule real quick. Washington, Oakland, Cincy, poor Joe Mixon, 30 carries in a 49-13 game. It's absurd. Miami, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. That's not great for Mark Ingram and James Conner. Just something to file away there. Greg Williams is doing something right there. All right, we got just a few minutes. I'm a little bit late on that, but we went off on some side topics. So I've been kicking off the rails part, Davis, just like this. And we touched on this earlier in the show in the sense of being passionate about a lot of things. Just tell me something else that Davis Mattek is passionate about.
Dude, well, I just got a Saint Bernard puppy. Oh. So this has been my.
What brought that about?
She's not allowed upstairs in my office right now because she is too coordinated to. She falls down the stairs.
Yeah, right. I remember that. I remember what brought. So what brought about getting a puppy?
It was just so I have another dog, another stray rescue dog who I really love, but she's about 4, and we think that it will extend her life to have a pal. She'll probably live a couple years longer if she has another dog buddy. So that was the guiding light there.
When I think of St. Bernards, I always think of the old Looney Tunes with the St. Bernard up in like the Alps that would have like the bucket, and the bucket had like a martini set, and it would mix a martini for you. Yeah, we've got 2 cats. I'm more of a cat person, but that's a whole other topic.
That is a whole other topic. I grew up, I had cats. I'm not one of those people that's one or the other.
Yeah, and I think
just like dogs more.
I think that's the best way to be. I'm more like there's certain kinds of dog breeds and temperaments that I'm down with, and then other kinds of dog breeds and temperaments that are. See, this is going to be where like I'm going to get hate mail, right? Sometimes I feel like they're just like such linear thinkers, like they're so literal. sometimes, and cats like I like to think of myself, and I'm probably not at all riddle. I'm probably like totally linear and easy to solve, where cats are like complex. But I'm really dancing around this because when I was a kid, Davis, we had a lot of animals. My mom was the type that would take any animal, and I think there was one point that we had like 8 dogs and 13 cats in our house. And we had a Rottweiler, and Rottweilers, like St. Bernard's, not coordinated, right?
Yeah.
And my stepdad was trying to train our Rottweiler to go down and eat down in the basement. Like that's just where all the dog stuff was kept. And the dog didn't want to go down the steps because it tumbled down the steps.
Literally, yeah, like it's just like she can get up the stairs. So I let her up. I literally just got her 2 days ago. So I let her up the stairs with me yesterday while I was working. And my girlfriend got home and she went downstairs to go try and greet her. And I mean, just like basically face planted like all the way down there. And she bounced right back up because dogs are stupid and they, they just don't really realize that they're in pain. Yeah. But she's banned. Otherwise, I would come bring her up right now.
So we had a cat. We had a rescue cat. My stepdad was a professional boxer, and there was a cat that lived out at the gym, and they were going to tear it down, like the ring they had out in the field out there, and the cat liked to live in there. It's like, somebody needs to take this cat, so the cat's going to be okay. And we had this cat, Fritz, and whenever Barkley wouldn't go down the stairs to eat, Fritz would go down and take one piece of food in his mouth at a time and drop it in front of Barkley at the top of the steps. So the whole cats and dogs not getting along, it's ridiculous. That's actually
no, they can though.
I've seen cats and dogs get along much better, and where I see it run hot is dogs and cats and cats. Yeah, that's where it really runs hot. Well, that's awesome, man. So it sounds like, so you talk about your dogs, because I think one of the things, like, I spend having the job, lucky us that we have, is you spend a lot of time at home and you spend a lot of time with your animals, and I really enjoy watching the cats interact with each other and seeing their inner life, and it's like, so do you like to spend a lot of time with your dogs, like while you're at home working, to like hang around you, like they're like moons that orbit you, like while you're at home?
Yeah, the one dog, the OG dog, I got her when she was 1 from the shelter, and she just follows me around all day. Like she just is. She's downstairs right now keeping the other dog company because she doesn't want her to be by herself. But yeah, pretty much I'm with the OG dog pretty much 24/7.
It's good. Well, hopefully, like, animals remind us to be humble. Remind us to I don't know. Not be so stuck inside of our egos or our heads. Yeah. Right. I mean, I think
that's what's great about dogs.
Right. Then that is true. Like, a dog would probably be good for me because a dog gets you to like go outside, go to the park, run, like do something to get out. Whereas like house cat is kind of a pejorative for somebody that's just satisfied to sit around the house all day.
Right.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of a house cat.
Right. Yeah, me too.
My gosh, what else is going on? Okay, I'm just going to throw this totally out of left field because we have like 2 minutes left and we're doing left field stuff. Have you been watching at all what happened in Bolivia?
Like a little, a little bit. Not enough to speak eloquently about it on a podcast.
I can't speak eloquently about it either. The reason I'm bringing it up, Davis, is because in this post-truth era, whatever interpretation you want to apply to what happened in Bolivia, you can find an article or a pundit,
whichever side you, if you're a more liberal leaning person, you could find your interpretation of it. If you're a more conservative right wing sort of person, you could find your interpretation of it out there. And it would be very hard to, unless you probably spoke to a Bolivian, like face to face, you probably would not know what actually happened.
I don't even know if the Bolivians themselves know. I mean, that's what's interesting to me about this whole. It's the first time, because I try to be informed about things, and I realized as I've tried to read and inform myself of what's going on in Bolivia, that there's no way to pull apart like what the possible agenda of the angle of the coverage is. And this was probably true all along, but I think because of the instantaneous nature and social media nature of the way we get our information filtered, it's impossible to tease it apart from like trying to get actual good information to understand what's happening about something. It's interesting because it's been fun watching your career blossom since we first did a show together, and since
many moons ago.
And I know that because you also are interested in these like hyper intellectual type things and like total thought concept kind of stuff. That we've lived long enough now, Davis, to really see things meaningfully change in a way that we're wrestling with them as they're happening, and will continue to. where is this all going to happen, Davis? Is we're all going to be like leaders of our own miniature cults, like we're drawing people.
No, where it all goes is it all goes to this is the most left wing anyone will ever get on this show. Is where it all goes is eventually Western life is, I think, going to be people willfully attaching themselves via some sort of digital immortality thing into a simulation. Life will be a plugged in simulation, and your human body is going to be very, very like Matrixy, like just reclined and sitting in a tube somewhere.
Right. And it's funny too, because this goes back to the thing I was saying about brain, like getting into someone's brainstem or something like that. So we're seeing eye to eye. The boundaries that our body have imposed on our consciousness are going to be broken down soon. And some of us may have already done that through various means. Where did I want us to do that? Right there. So we'll take that down. If you're watching a little secret Easter egg, if you're watching the show live, and thank you everybody in the chat room. Thank you everybody as part of our community. Again, Davis Mattek, DAVISMATTEK. You can find him. The Swolecast, TakeCast, Sports Grid, Roto Experts, all kinds of good stuff. And do you do NBA now too?
So I do not. I guess I do a Monday podcast with Drew Dinkmeyer from Daily Roto and Michael Gallagher from RotoWorld.com. But I'm just the conduit. Those guys are the sharps, and I'm the guy who's coming from the outside, being like, "Hey, what happened in the last week of the NBA? Explain it to me so I know what's going on." Cool.
Well, you can get some good NBA content through those folks, through Davis. That's
Definitely.
That's me in the IDP show too that I do here. So thank you everybody. Always thank you for indulging us, encouraging us, and giving us the opportunity to do this. And we march on, and at this point, hopefully, we've come all the way full circle with fantasy football. We're over what we were right or wrong about, and we're just enjoying it again. And certainly, it's easier at this time of year than ever to just enjoy the games and let that overshadow however your fantasy teams did. But we still want to help you however we can, as always, because you're so very classy.